before you roll up your sleeve, think about who is giving you that shot.
SIRVA. Until 2015, had you ever heard that word? Nope. It can happen when someone gives a shot wrong, perhaps too high on the arm or too deep.
As a result, inflammation of the shoulder structures causes patients to experience pain, a decreased range of motion, and a decreased quality of life. Hi, this is Lucia. Hope I didn't scare you with the beginning there. Okay, first, I am not anti-vax. If you were planning to get your COVID vaccine, by all means, please do. But also, please, for the love of God, watch this video first, especially regarding compensation for injuries relating to COVID vaccines at the timestamp on the screen. Also, I am not a doctor or medical expert in any way. I'm just speaking from personal experience, plus bringing in some scientific studies that I have found on the interwebs. I just wanted to spread awareness of an injury that can occur with any vaccine due to how the vaccine is administered rather than the vaccine itself. Not many people seem to know about SIRVA, in spite of the fact that it makes up around half of all vaccine injury claims. By telling you this, I hope it will help you be aware of the signs of SIRVA as well as steps you can take if you have this injury. And if you're a doctor or somebody who gives vaccines, I hope this is a reminder to use the proper technique because this type of injury can really impact someone's quality of life. And unfortunately, it happened to me. Shoulder injury related to vaccine administration, or SIRVA, is a preventable occurrence caused by the injection of a vaccine into the shoulder capsule rather than the deltoid muscle. As a result, inflammation of the shoulder structures causes patients to experience pain, a decreased range of motion, and a decreased quality of life. The main symptoms include persistent shoulder pain and a limited range of motion. The keys to distinguishing SIRVA are that the symptoms typically begin within 48 hours of vaccine administration and that they do not improve with over-the-counter analgesic medications. Patients will often visit their physicians months later because they are not able to carry out daily tasks that were possible before the vaccination. These patients are often diagnosed with inflammatory injuries such as bursitis, rotator cuff tears, and adhesive capsulitis, which is also known as frozen shoulder. During physical examination and on ultrasound scan, SIRVA will not appear to be any different from routine shoulder injuries. The only difference is that the shoulder symptoms would have started within days of a vaccination. Treatment for SIRVA is the same as treatment for routine inflammatory injuries. I mentioned earlier that this happened to me, so here's my story. So I came into the emergency room in July of 2020 due to a cellulitis infection on my foot. And I swear this is related, this is how it happened. Basically, this infection was a complication of a bee sting from a week before that. I stepped on a bee with my bare feet. Gosh darn, that hurt. But it got infected. So I went to the ER to get treatment. I was given a pill and 2 shots. I got one in my hip, and then I got a tetanus shot in my shoulder. And the tetanus shot was not to treat the cellulitis. They asked me basically when I had my last tetanus shot, and I didn't remember, so they recommended that I get one. The shot was administered into my left arm, high up near my shoulder. It pinched like any other vaccine, and immediately after it was sore, which was to be expected. But I also noticed I could not lift or extend my arm too far out or at certain angles because it felt weak and it caused pain, and my shoulder also hurt a lot. And I expected the pain to disappear or at least lessen within the next few days, but it didn't. A week later, it still hurt just as much, and I had the same limited mobility plus general weakness that affected my whole arm, especially when lifting or extending it, and in my fingers. The new pain and mobility issues in my arm were interfering with daily tasks such as taking a shower, trying to scrub my back hurt, getting dressed, and working at my computer, like typing. It got worse at night when I was trying to sleep. I had pain or discomfort in most sleeping positions, but it was worse if I slept on my left side. It also got worse when I moved too much. Sometimes rest or exercise helped, and sometimes it just made it worse. I should mention that these symptoms were not normal for me, which I found very concerning. And I know that in most cases, it's pretty normal to get a little bit of pain after a vaccine, especially tetanus shot, because have you seen those freaking needles? But usually the pain goes away after 2 to 3 days, so I definitely knew something was up because of how long it was lasting. So the pain persisted for about 3 weeks, and it gradually lessened. I still couldn't lift anything heavy or sleep on my left side or extend my left arm in certain directions without a range of mild discomfort or pain, like when I tried to reach to scratch my back or attempt to put on a tight shirt, because like getting my arms in requires a specific movement. My mobility was still like limited at that point, but not quite as much as it was in the first week. Later that month, I saw an orthopedic surgeon who confirmed through an x-ray that I have tendinitis in my shoulder. The official diagnosis was tendinitis of the left rotator cuff. I also got an MRI a month after that, and same results. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have any rotator cuff tears, which only show up on an MRI for the most part. I was still having symptoms at this point, and keep in mind, this was months later. I had gotten the vaccine in July 2020, and at this point it was around late August 2020. So I got a steroid shot in my shoulder to lessen the inflammation, and that definitely helped relieve some of those symptoms. I was already using ice and specific exercises for my arm to try to relieve the symptoms, but honestly the steroid shot was what helped so much more than that. Over time, thankfully, I was able to get most of my mobility back in my arm. I was also able to sleep on my left side again, thankfully. A few months later, some of the pain came back in my shoulder, the aching, the numbness in my fingers, and I had to go and get another steroid shot. So I'm not sure exactly how long this injury is going to last. Right now, everything's okay because I got a steroid shot somewhat recently. It's about April 2021 right now. So I'm really hoping that this injury will eventually go away, but I have no idea, because for some people this can be permanent. Other people it might go away, but I've also heard for some it can be a permanent injury. So we'll have to wait and see. So if you're a doctor or nurse or someone who gives vaccines in general, you might be asking, how can I prevent this injury from happening? And according to the study I mentioned earlier, the key to preventing SIRVA and other vaccine injuries is to always use landmarking. The next time you give a vaccine to a patient, pay attention to your technique. Even the most experienced healthcare professionals can develop bad habits and need to polish their skills periodically. So again, if you are a doctor or someone who gives vaccines, I highly recommend checking out the study in the description. It also includes some helpful information and diagrams on landmarking. I also included a link to a helpful page listing many more resources on how to properly administer vaccines, so check that out. If you're someone who got a vaccine and you think you have SIRVA, here's some of my advice for you. First of all, if you got a vaccine very recently, like in the past few days to a week, wait a little bit longer. It's normal to have a little bit of soreness in your arm after you have a vaccine. In that time, if you are in pain, you can use ice and an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen. But if you're still having symptoms after 2 weeks or more, I definitely recommend trying my next advice. First of all, see your doctor, tell them your symptoms, and see if you can get an x-ray and possibly an MRI if needed. I know that x-rays can show you if you have inflammation or tendinitis, but certain injuries, like rotator cuff tears, will only show up on an MRI. Your treatment options depend on the nature and severity of the injury. It could range from ice, painkillers, exercise, to steroid shots, or even surgery. Be sure to follow your doctor's orders, and if the initial recommendations do not seem to be helping enough, don't be afraid to ask for more treatment options. For me, ice and exercises were just not enough, so I told this to my orthopedic surgeon, who then suggested I get a steroid shot. If you plan to seek compensation, keep meticulous track of your medical records. Request printed or digital lab results, and take note of information like your doctor's name and contact information, dates, location, and purpose of each visit related to your injury. Your attorney will likely request information like this, and the process will go faster if you already have much of it on hand. SIRVA is on the vaccine injury table. No, not that table. This table. This table lists all the injuries covered by the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. SIRVA is on this list, meaning that you can seek compensation for it through this program. And I think in most cases, any attorney fees are paid for by the government. So even if you have little to no income, this legal process should be accessible to you. But there's a tiny little problem. If your injury was caused by a COVID-19 vaccine, you're pretty much out of luck in terms of compensation. Compensation for SIRVA through this program is only an option if the injury was caused by particular vaccines, like the flu shot or the tetanus shot. To see the full list, check out the vaccine injury table that I linked in the description. Unfortunately, the COVID vaccine is not currently included in the VICP since it's so new, meaning you can't file a claim for a SIRVA injury caused by a COVID vaccine just yet. Sadness. And apparently you can't sue the medical provider either. If you get an injury from emergency countermeasures like the COVID vaccine, providers are immune from liability. So if you can't file a claim with the VICP and you can't sue the provider, what are your options for seeking compensation for SIRVA caused by a COVID vaccine? According to John Spitek of Shannon Law Group, your only option is to file via the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, or CICP, which he refers to as a watered-down version of the VICP. So there are more barriers and less benefits. For instance, attorney fees are not covered by the program, meaning it's not often even worth it to file a claim through the CICP. In addition, the CICP only compensates you for lost wages, medical bills, and death benefit, but not pain and suffering. Pain and suffering actually makes up the majority of the compensation you'd get from the VICP. For more information on the CICP, check out this webinar around the 8.5-minute mark. The link should be up in the corner of this video. In order for COVID-19 vaccines to be added to the vaccine injury table, Congress has to add an excise tax on the vaccine to help fund the compensation program. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services also has to add the COVID vaccine to the list of covered vaccines. If you want to help speed this process, you could contact your representative or senator to let them know that this is an important issue to you. Hello, yes, this is important to me. I hate phone calls. Oh, hi, I hate phone calls too. That's why I wrote a script you can use via email or phone if you contact them. Link in the description. I also included a link to a page that can help you figure out who your representative is for your area and contact them. There are some predictions that the COVID vaccine will eventually be added to the table, but it's hard to know exactly when. If it does happen, I'll be sure to post an update in the description of this video or in a comment. Until then, if you have yet to get the COVID vaccine, just make sure that you find a doctor, nurse, or pharmacist who is up to date on their training. Or you could follow this lady's advice.
One suggestion given to me was simply put your arm over your shoulder. That way it can't be given too high if they won't let you do that. Simply make sure you're at the same level. If the person giving the shot is sitting, you need to be sitting. If they're standing, make sure you're standing.
If you already got the COVID vaccine and think that you have SIRVA, check out the previous section on treatment if you haven't already. Also, keep track of your medical records in case COVID vaccines are added to the VICP in the future. The good news is there would be 8 years of retroactive coverage if and when the COVID vaccine is added. If your shoulder injury wasn't from a COVID vaccine, but from another vaccine that's on the vaccine injury table, like the tetanus shot or the flu shot, Keep watching for more relevant information on the VICP. An important requirement for seeking compensation for SIRVA is that you have to have had this injury for 6 months or more. This is likely to prioritize the more severe cases. I honestly wish it was less, because even 3 months of this injury can potentially interfere with quality of life and productivity. Another important thing to know about this program is that it really only provides compensation. They're not required to alert doctors about these injuries that have happened in their clinics and emergency rooms and offices. I really feel like this should change, because one of the best methods to prevent SIRVA is for doctors and people who give vaccines, first of all, to be aware that SIRVA exists, and second, to be aware if an injury had occurred in their clinic. Because how can you fix something if you don't know that anything went wrong in the first place? At the very least, if the government or the vaccine program alerts the doctors and pharmacists if an injury occurs at their clinics and encourage them to refresh their training, this could do a lot of good in preventing SIRVA from happening. I think for now it may be a good idea for patients to alert the person who gave the vaccine and say, hey, I got this injury, and just hope that they take it seriously and brush up on their training. For more information on seeking compensation for SIRVA injuries, check out some of the links in the description. The government actually considered removing SIRVA from the vaccine injury table recently, but thankfully they revoked this suggestion, meaning that SIRVA is still on the vaccine injury table. If it was removed, while you could still technically seek compensation, it'd probably be a little more expensive and more challenging. So, more info on that in the description. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful to you in some way. If you're someone who gives vaccines, I hope this was a good reminder to use those landmarking techniques. I know there's going to be a lot of people lining up for COVID vaccines, and you'll probably be in a rush to get them all done. Just keep this information in mind, because it is very important to give the vaccines properly. And if you're someone who got this injury, I hope this video was validating so that you know you're not crazy and this is a real thing and that there are solutions to this. On another note, this video took many hours of my life to make, but due to the nature of the topic, there's a good chance this video will be demonetized. So if you want to show your appreciation, feel free to leave a tip via the link in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, night, or whatever, and stay safe. Bye-bye! I just want to spread diseases. No, this is why we get vaccinated.